Ladies and gentlemen, we do thank you very much for your attention, and now we invite you to sit back, relax, and
enjoy. Welcome to our top travel destinations. I am your host, Kevin Flanagan. I have been editor of the weekly travel news column in the Sunday Independent and the Fine Wine and Food Guide, and I am here to use my decades of experience to help you know exactly where to stay, eat, drink, shop and explore when visiting the world's top travel destinations. So sit back and enjoy the wonders of travel as we take off on our magical journey together. Welcome to Kevin's Top Travel Destinations, and this week I have a very special guest, Fergal O'Keefe, who is the creator and the host of the long-running travel podcast, Travel Tales with Fergal, which is in its sixth season and is now listened to in over 120 countries worldwide. Fergal is very busy. He also has a regular travel column in the Nationalist newspaper in Tipperary and has travel slots on the morning radio show on Clare FM and Tip FM. So we're very, very lucky to have him here this week, and he's going to talk about Halkidiki in Greece, which is really a fascinating destination. Welcome, Fergal.
Yeah. And can I just say first that I'm always getting emails of people about being guests or about the podcast. And yours actually is the first one. I actually went on to your podcast and I went definitely straight away because I absolutely love it immediately. So that I just want you to know that.
Well, I'm blushing that Fergal, it really is a fan of the top travel destinations. And thank you so much, Fergal. And I'm a big fan. I really loved the cyclist who cycled around the world, including going through Afghanistan and is now going to Iraq. That was a really fascinating show. And it just goes to show how travel can really take people over. Why have you chosen as your top travel destination Halkidiki in Greece, which I know little about? So this is really exciting to dive into new territory.
Well, Greece, I suppose, it's my favorite country. I've been going there for over 30 years. It was the first place I went to on holidays with my girlfriend, now wife. We went to the islands, the Cyclades. Then we went back with our kids and absolutely love it. Our kids love it. Greece ticks all the boxes, like for the food, the history, the weather, the culture. It's got everything. So absolutely love it. So I'm always now looking for new places. And a little trick that I always do every year when Ryanair do new routes, I always check out the new routes in Ryanair because one, they're usually interesting places, often off the beaten track. And two, if you get them the first year, Irish people are sometimes reluctant to go to new places. So you always get them for great prices. There was six of us. We flew into Thessaloniki, which is northern Greece. And I think it was less than, about €900 for six of us return, which, is the magic. If we can ever get around the 1,000 mark, it's always the magic figure. We wanted to go to Greece and Thessaloniki. We didn't stay there, but I'd definitely like to go back there. It's the second biggest city in Greece. Really interesting place, very famous for its food. Got a huge Turkish influence. It was more of a Turkish city, part of the Ottoman Empire. But we used Thessaloniki to actually go down to Halkidiki, which, isn't big in Ireland or in England, I suppose, but quite popular with maybe tourists. I often find Scandinavians are great. If this place is popular with Scandinavians, it's a good spot. So Halkidiki is very popular with them.
And give us a flavor of arriving in Halkidiki and give us a sense of how it's going to smell, look, taste, and feel.
Yeah, so we get into Halkidiki. Actually, a tip that I would give people, something I did there was when we arrived in, I got a car. I'm always a bit nervous hiring a car, especially 4 kids. So we've got to get like a bigger car. So they're often expensive. But we went with a local company, Halkidiki Car Hire, they were called. But then you're always nervous because the price was ridiculously cheap. We were there for 2 weeks and I think it was like €800 or something for a 7-seater. So I'm always worried, will the car be there? But it was cool. So we arrived in, it's not a big airport. And there was a guy standing there waiting for us. And he brought us out to the car park, where the regular cars are. And the car was there. So he just driven it in from town and gave us the car, said, off you go. And the same thing when we came back to the airport. So it kind of felt maybe like a Shannon type airport, those regional ones.
Yes. And I thought you gave a very interesting summary about choosing Halkidiki, which was you go there to find a wife, you travel to the second island with your wife, and you go to the third island to find a new wife or some such, or to get
Or
a
lose your wife,
or
actually,
lose
is
your wife.
the line.
A little bit about what you can expect and
Yeah.
about these three islands.
Yeah, see, that's what I absolutely love. So the Halkidiki are three fingers or three peninsula. It's northern Greece up towards the Turkish side of the border, way up there. But these three peninsulas are quite distinct from each other. So as you say, like the first one, they say you go to find your wife, and that peninsula is called Cassandra. And what's really cool about it for people is so it's a younger crew. Like a lot of younger people go there. And it's very buzzy. It's funny, kind of a mixture because it's famous. People might have heard of Sani. It's a five-star hotel, very famous one. So there on that peninsula, there's a place along that area where there's loads of nightclubs. There's like these 10 huge nightclubs all right beside each other. They're like Ibiza nightclubs, like huge. Some of them are big open air ones. So because I've got like teenagers in my family, I specifically went to that one first. So we went there. I actually picked a hotel near these 10 nightclubs so they could go out for a weekend, get it out of their system. And then the next one, then the
And
next
how did that work out, incidentally?
it worked a treat actually because we travel so much with the kids. They're very resilient. So my older guy is a bit of a character, and he was in the water, like chatting to like these English guys, like finding out where was the places to go. So they brought him to the biggest nightclub. And my younger guy, he was like 17 at the time. He'd never been to a nightclub. I suppose he's more 16 actually. So this first one was this huge open air, fit thousands of people. And I dropped him into town and going back to the hotel. And my oldest guy rings me and goes, he'd run out of money already. So any chance of another 50 euros. And I literally just happened to be driving by when he said this. So I went into the nightclub and they wouldn't let me in, this huge nightclub. And then my son, who was only 18, arrives out and goes up to the bouncers and goes, don't worry, he's okay. And then the bouncers let me in. So my son got me into the nightclub. And it was amazing actually because it was open air. And I mean, it fit a couple of thousands. And what's really unusual about it, and it's kind of like the future, I would say, of nightclubs, was this huge place, fit thousands of people. But in the middle, where there should have been the dance floor, it was just all these booths and tables. It was mad watching it. So this place was full of thousands of people, all dancing in their own table with their own drinks, but not mixing. It was very strange, but the kids loved it. It was a great
They loved it.
experience.
Well,
Yeah.
that's the main thing. And then you stayed in Cassandra. What other attractions would there be for, say, yourself and your wife and parents or people of a middle age?
Yeah, I would go like Sani and places like that. It's got gorgeous beaches and towns. Sithonia, the next peninsula, is the one I really wanted to go to. So that's where we went on to for our next part of our trip. Sithonia is one of the most beautiful places. You know, when you think of Greece, you think of these big, beautiful sandy beaches surrounded by the mountains. And often when you get best of beaches in Greece, if there's a top 10, they might have five of them from Sithonia that would be on these beaches. So they're absolutely amazing. And the place that I went to is called Porto Koufo, and it's at the very bottom of Sithonia. And it is the most gorgeous place that I've ever been to, I have to say. It's like this little alcovey beach, it's surrounded by mountains with a tiny little village. So for me, the less is more because if I'm, say, on the action side, I want to go out and do stuff. But the quieter it is, the better it is. Porto Koufo is the name of the place, and Porto Koufo Resort was the hotel we stayed in, which was absolutely amazing. And it was sort of a 5 minute walk from this little alcovey beach.
And what we'll do is on the
Yeah.
toptraveldestinations.com website, I'll have a fact sheet and we will list all of these places so you'll be able to follow them up if you are interested.
Yeah.
What was the food and the drink like when you were in Siphonia?
Oh, it was absolutely gorgeous. There was this little village like on the water, but with free restaurants. And I was like, yeah, you don't go to the first two, you go to the third, those places. And every night we went there, and it was just absolutely amazing. I remember going in there the first night, and the owner of the restaurant came out to us and brought me into the kitchen to pick out the fish. How would you like your sauce done? And it was the nicest sauce I ever tasted. And even Porto Koufo Resort, they had their own vineyard, their own olive oil, which always makes it really special. And the owners, it was run by a family. This Porto Koufo Resort, they're kind of like a story of Greece because That used to be their family, their summer house, this huge house. And then when the recession happened around 2008, 2009, this family had furniture companies throughout Greece. And he ended up losing like hundreds of millions. But he ended up converting their summer house into a hotel. They're like an apart hotel into different apartments, and they work it now. But every night we used to sit with them, having drinks, talking about their history and the history of the area. And that makes it so special.
How many nights would you recommend staying in Sithonia? How many nights did you stay?
Yeah, so we stayed there, I'd say about 5 nights, but my wife's sister went back there this summer actually on our recommendation. They stayed there for like 10 nights and they loved it. It's a very small little town, but there's so much to do all around it. For instance, Tirani is the next village, 15-minute drive from Porto Koufo, and that was the original capital of Greece. So that's a beautiful little town with underground. If you're into diving, there's underground old Greek ruins. There's an old Byzantine church there in the village. You know, all around the coast, there are amazing beaches with these amazing beach bars. So you could go to a different one if you're into driving around the area each day. There's so much to do there, you know?
But you would recommend having a car, even if you just picked
Yes.
one of your three destinations.
Definitely to go to the beach bars around the area. I would recommend to have the car. There's one beach bar, say, about a half an hour away where you go down a little dust road. The bar has got like a tiki roof with music going and really cool in the middle of nowhere. It's quite amazing. And there's another one, a Brazilian bar. The owner came back to Greece, got this idea from Brazil, that kind of vibe. So another place there, and the kids used to be playing with the locals, playing beach volleyball and soccer. So there's an awful lot to do in that area. So it's quite secluded, but there's still loads to do. And I would go as one of the nicest places I've ever stayed in.
Absolutely. And then your final choice, which is Mount Athos.
Mm. So Mount Athos it's a magical place, the holy mountain they call it. And actually, I recommend people a book I read at the time was William Dalrymple called From the Holy Mountain, which is about him being there in Mount Athos and then traveling through the Middle East. I would really recommend that. And Mount Athos, its own little theocracy. It's separate from Greece and it's recognized by the EU. You need a passport to get in there, or you need a visa to get in, and no women are allowed. So it's a 1,000-year-old theocracy. It's the holiest place in the Greek Orthodox Church. So you have to go to Thessaloniki to get a visa, and that could take a couple of months. Usually it's just Orthodox people. William Dalrymple spent time there. It was interesting. But Prince Charles goes there a lot. And I don't know if you remember, but when his coronation, he actually had Greek Orthodox priests there at his actual coronation that came from Mount Athos. So he goes there a lot for retreats. And another guy that loves it is Putin. So he's gone there a lot in the past. The official wine of the Kremlin is from Mount Athos, would you believe? So they're Orthodox Greek, quite traditional.
And you could not bring your wife literally with you.
No, no, they say the only females in the island are the cats. That's it. Even the waters off of Mount Athos, this peninsula, are owned by Mount Athos. So you can't get a boat within 500 meters of the coast. But Orinopoli is at the very top where the peninsula meets the mainland. There's this amazing town called Orinopoli, which is where I would recommend people to go. So it's actually like a border. I walked one day down to the border, like all with wire fencing. And it's very atmospheric because there's an old Frank or Templar style fort, like it ruins now, but it's there on the border. But you see the border fence with the barbed wire that you can't get over. But from Orinopoli, you can get boats that go all along the coast. It's a 3 hour trip, and you see all of these amazing monasteries built into the mountains, and they're huge. The biggest one is the Russian one, and that's quite amazing because when I was there, they had loads of building work going on. They say Russian billionaires have invested in it, but there's over 20 of these different monasteries built on cliff edges. And they're quite amazing. So Orinopoli, I would so recommend for people because you see all the monks, they would come to get food or to get break. So there's all these boats. I would describe it a bit like, it reminded me like a Saving Private Ryan. The boats would arrive in, except for it was with Greek Orthodox priests, because the boats, the front would open up and all these Greek Orthodox in their Cossack style, old style gowns would come off the boat, walking out to go for a little bit of R&R. So Orinopoli is interesting because it sells lots of Orthodox kind of jewelry, you know, like you'd see, say, a Christian version in Knock. So all these knick-knack shops, and really interesting place, I have to say.
How long would you spend in Mount Athos and what would you do there?
There's a lot to do. So Orinopoly, we spent a couple of days, but there's so much to do there because off of Orinopoly, as well as you can, do your boat trip around Mount Athos and see the atmosphere there. Right off of Orinopoly, there's an island. You could go over there for day trips. There's ferries. It only takes about 20 minutes of ferry. But if you want to get that Greek island feel, you could actually go over there and spend a few days. Chris Rea, the singer, has a house on the island. And right beside it, there's another little island that's famous for scuba diving. There's loads to do. Xenia Orinopoly was the hotel I stayed on. It was on its own little beach, but also it had an outdoor pool. Wasn't at all expensive, and it was literally 1 minute walk from the center of town, and you could watch all the boats coming in and out from Mount Athos.
So to get it right in my head, so you
Yeah,
only visit Mount Athos, as a male to
yeah.
see the monks and to see that, then you come back to
Well,
mixed society outside of the holy shrine.
yeah, but I mean, you'd have to get a visa, and that can take months in Thessaloniki. William Dalrymple talks about that in the book about waiting for the visa. So really, what I'm saying is you'd go to Orinopoly, which is literally on the border of Mount Athos. You won't
Okay.
go onto the rest of the peninsula. You'll be on the edge of it, but it's very atmospheric. And in Orinopoly, the monks don't eat meat, so there's amazing fish restaurants because of that. So in Orinopoly, the most amazing fish restaurants that you can eat with kind of a certain style, the food, that the monks like. So really recommend that.
And how did your wife and daughters, how did they feel about the exclusion from the Mount Athos?
Yeah, I suppose bemused. It's kind of a quaint thing in a way,
And you can get a sense of Mount Athos even though you're not
exactly.
actually in. How long would you recommend staying in and around there, just over the
A
border?
couple of days would be enough. It's a small little town. And actually, just before I forget, actually, I forgot to say to you that in Sithonia, as well as Porto Koufo, there's another place and it's called Vouveru, which is amazing. It's kind of a lot of modern buildings, but it's built around the most amazing beaches. But also it's got this kind of cool thing that Greeks do, and we did it, is you can hire like speedboat for a day yourself. You drive it yourself and off you go with your family. And off of Vouveru, there's loads of these little islands, and you drive around between the islands, go off, go onto a beach, get off, go for a swim. So after an hour of panic, trying to figure out how to work the speedboat and, putting down the anchor, and we'd all jump in for a swim, and then the boat would be going off and we'd be chasing back after the boat. But it's a really cool thing to do because they just rent out the speedboats to everybody.
You really opened my eyes to a different possibility for a holiday. Before we wrap up, just give us a sense of one interesting drink, one local meal, the things that you could really enjoy and indulge, something to buy. What comes to mind that would really give you a sense of this place?
So, like when I go to Greece, I become very boring compared to other countries because I absolutely love Greek salad, which is so simple with the tomatoes and good olive oil and feta. So every day we would have like Greek salads, calamari, we become very boring, and fish. When I was there in Porto Koufo, I had a scorpion fish, but it was actually more the sauce. It was even
Yes.
the way he described it, because he literally was like, "How do you want your sauce?" And I just rustled a little something here, and it just was the nicest thing I ever tasted on fish. It was so simple. Thessaloniki's got its own beer, but when I was in Porto Koufo, they had their own vineyard as well. It's a cliche, but the wine from the place always tastes better. Listen to your podcast, the theme that seems to come up is you love coffee. So while I was there, I was drinking the Greek coffee. I don't know what you think of that. They say it's good for your indigestion or your digestion, but I'm not too sure. It was very thick. It would nearly be gloop into your cup.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And one other thing is when we were down Porto Coufo, we used to walk down to the beach to get a coffee, myself and my wife, every morning. The donuts there were the nicest. They were huge, but they were the nicest. They were just bigger, maybe a bit thicker than the ones we're used to. Absolutely love that.
It seems, Fergal, that the kids of
Yeah.
various ages and your wife really enjoyed themselves by the sound of it.
Absolutely loved it. They go back there tomorrow, which is always the great sign, isn't it?
And it doesn't sound as if it really broke the bank either.
No, that's what I love about Greece. It's a big thing. This year we went to Turkey, it was the same thing. Like we stayed in Calcan in this villa. You couldn't get a hotel for that price, but it was
Yeah.
unbelievable with a pool, everyone their own room, the view. So comparatively, it is so much better. And Greece, I find that. And food, eating out. We used to play a game, you know, that my favorite programs is The Trip, if you ever watch it. So that's what we always do in holidays is guess the price. You know, they always used to do that at the end of each episode, guess the price of the meal. So we always do that on holidays. And in Turkey and in Greece, it's always generally lower than everyone guesses. But you go then to another, like France or somewhere, and it's always more. That's a big thing.
And also, it seems that these areas that you've selected for us are still a little off the beaten track as far as tourism goes.
Oh, completely. Like Porto Koufo, you know, there's a little party that wants to be
Yes,
selfish.
yes.
And you know, it's your magic thing. But I just love that. I got on so well with that family and they were so gorgeous. I will definitely go back there. My sister-in-law went this year. And what I loved about him, he used to tell me about the history of the place. I was saying like Tirani was the village next door, and Porto Koufo was a very deep, it's a little bay, but very deep water. And he used to talk about how the German U-boats used to go in there during the war, or the Persians were invading Greece. The Greek boats hid in the little cove of Porto Koufo and defeated the Persian Empire. And those are the sort of stories that bring a place to life, isn't it?
And finally, what sort of temperatures and when would you say is the best time to visit?
Yeah, so that's a tricky one, isn't it? Because I mean, the year I went in July and it was perfect. Wasn't too hot. You know, it was hot, but we are fine. I mean, this summer was another level. So it's a tricky one now about when to go. But I found it fine. We were in July, maybe even going into August, and it was completely bearable, you know?
Well, I think you've given us a real sense of somewhere new and somewhere different and somewhere exciting and somewhere to discover. And I really thank you for sharing that and sharing your obvious love for the place, Fergal. And as I say, we will have the main details in the top travel destinations fact sheet. And if you've enjoyed this episode with Fergal, please do share it with a friend. And thank you, Fergal, for sharing your top travel destinations with us.
Thank you very much. It was very enjoyable.